Hey, film friends. I'm Nick Furman. This is Furman on Film, the show where we break down movies, sometimes with friends, sometimes solo, but always with deep love for the art form. And speaking of art, today I want to talk about train dreams. Because train dreams, guys, might have to get a little philosophical here at the start of 2026. Train Dreams was the movie I desperately needed in 2025. And, to be honest, I don't say that lightly. It's been a year, guys. It was a year. One of those years, the kind where the noise really never shuts off, where people, jobs, places are coming and going. And it's a little chaos. It's a little hard to get out of bed in the middle of winter. And then along comes a movie that just quietly reminds you what it means to exist. This film does all of those like sort of squishy, ineffable things that I'm always chasing in movies and really in all art. The majesty of the mundane, the journey of a life filled with love and loss, the search for meaning and connection on this very brief, very fragile mortal coil. And most of all, the breathtaking miracle. Man, it just sounds so corny, but it sounds like I'm on a Hallmark commercial, or a card. But it's the way this stuff is captured. The breathtaking miracle of simply being alive. I think Jeff Mangum has that lyric with Neutral Milk Hotel. You can look up the track, but it's something like how crazy or how astonishing it is to be anything at all. Like that there's just a particular miracle in just being alive. And so nothing this year has quit me quite like this. Not to this degree. And of course, I'm talking about this film year, which is still kind of going on. So anyway, enough of that. This is Clint Bentley's Train Dreams. So plot, spoiler free. Let's keep it simple. This isn't really much of a plot movie anyway. At its core, Train Dreams follows one man's life over several decades. He's a logger in the kind of the Pacific Northwest, more so like Idaho, Montana. But we watch him work, fall in love, suffer, age, and sort of bear witness to a world that keeps changing around him. I mean, the timing doesn't exactly line up historically, but this movie almost depicts a shift from like agrarian to industrial, or at least from sort of country into more urban environments. And that's it. That's the movie. And I mean that as kind of the highest compliment imaginable. This is not a plot forward movie in the traditional sense. It's experiential, it's human, and by nature that means it's episodic. It's almost memory-like, which, remember, we'll talk about that again in a second. Moments come and go the way they do in real life. Like some moments exist in our brains as monumental, but others, they're like boots nailed to a tree that barely register in our immediate experience, but come back years later. So this film understands something that's sort of deeply true, which is that most lives are not defined by grand events, but by, honestly, like rote accumulation, by time, like the ticking of a clock, by like the turning of seasons, by what's gone and what remains, by the cyclical nature of all existence. So you're like, okay, we're moving to themes. You're like, Nick, you've been in your head about themes since we started this. You're not wrong. But this movie is about impermanence. It's about how everything, people, places, industries, landscapes, eventually kind of slip through our fingers. It's about masculinity, but not the loud kind, not the hoorah kind, not the in-your-face kind, the quiet kind. And I don't know how you feel about Joel Edgerton, I'm fine with him. I know some people have kind of an allergic reaction to him. I think he's stupendous in films like Warrior, for instance. But I would say this is the best Edgerton performance by miles. And it's because of his ability to do this quiet masculinity thing where, you never really quite learned how to articulate grief, only how to endure it and bear it on your face, right? And there's just a whole lot of great nonverbal acting, a whole lot of like power of presence acting that makes this just a terrific role, and one which he should be nominated for, but he probably won't be. But more importantly, this movie, and this is where the Malick stuff is going to come in. It's about nature, not as a backdrop, in other words, like the background of this human story, but honestly as more of a dominant force. More like humans are temporary guests here, and the film never lets us forget that, particularly in its camera work, which again, we're about to get back to. And so somehow, despite all of this stuff, what it ultimately ends up being about is connection, about the way meaning can feel elusive to us right up until the moment that we realize that it was there all along. And something clicks into place, rewrites our entire noetic structure, and we are able to view the world through, like, perspectively, just completely differently. So you're like, wow, this is a really heady description. It's a pretty heady picture, and it has to be, because there's not always a ton going on. Like it is not F1 in the traditional sense, okay? But that is not in any degree to say that there's no craft. In fact, let's talk about craft, below the line stuff. The film is not, I wrote down initially that the film is presented in an Academy aspect ratio, which is not in fact true, because what this film is actually presented in is this unique 4:3 format. Academy ratio is actually 1.37 to 1 or something like this. This is like 1.33 to 1. So, you're like, wow, cool, Nick. Why does that matter? Well, it does in a couple sense. One, it's stunning. Like, it's truly some of the most gorgeous nature photography that you'll see all year. Like, Clint Bentley is out here just like out Malicking Malick, man, like in what he's doing. So many ground level shots, so much emphasis on like textural things, trees, water, fire, wind, ash, like it's all there. And it's like almost palpable the way it's shot. The camera, it consistently, they put the camera actually on the ground, and it shrinks the human perspective, and by extension, expands the natural one. Like, you just can't help it does it for you visually, so it can't help but reframe your mind, because you actually feel small watching this movie in the best way. Now, why the 4:3 works is, so we're talking about the fact that like every frame feels considered, composed, selected. It's all genius. There's restraint all throughout this thing. It plays at like maybe 100 minutes, probably less. There's a brevity of words, total foregrounding of visuals. It's a trust in the audience to like pick up the ball on this narrative and run with it. But the reason 4:3 works is the brothers, or excuse me, him and Clint Bentley and Greg Cuidar, who have been working together on a couple of awesome projects lately, including Sing Sing last year. They wanted it to appear like photographs, and again, like what I say earlier, we're talking about memories, right? The power of memory, the accumulation of experiences that define a life. Because this is about a life, a man who is searching for meaning. Like, what the hell does all this mean? Why live? Why exist? Why is the world pain? So anyway, you get all that. And it may not have been their intention, but a lot of the things that this is about a log, or what you're capturing is these super tall trees, and I don't know if they're sequoias or redwoods, but you've got a lot of like real old growth foliage, and the way that the the aspect ratio plays because of its sort of length over width. It just foregrounds the trees even more. So I think it all just really works. So the point I'm trying to make is that this is, wait for it, cinematic. Like a capital C. This is the kind of movie, for me, Mr. Second Screen often himself, like, you can't second screen this movie. First of all, it's too short. Second of all, there's not enough dialogue for you to just be listening while you're on your phone. Like, you got to be there because it's the movie that is cinematic and then pulls you in. It's the reason the medium exists in the first place. Beyond that, another ingenious choice. The voiceover completely works. You know me, you know I've been critical of voiceovers, but the reason this one works is because it is almost literary. It feels like a great storyteller reading aloud by firelight. Honestly, it's like you're sitting at the campfire that some of these men are when they're out on their logging trips. It elevates the film rather than explaining it. They got Will Patton to do it. And it's just great. I mean, it reads like, some of you lit majors can give me like better references, but it reads as erudite. It reads as thought out. And to me, if you just describe the scene with your storytelling in voiceover, it is a completely meaningless use of the medium. It either needs to be like funny and pressing on the boundaries of the film, a la like Goodfellas, or it needs to be what this is, which is like hyper literate and great. And the performances, man, William H. Macy is so terrific. Like, I would have been okay with the nomination for him. Kerry Condon shows up in the third act and nearly just like steals the third act right out from under everyone for 10 minutes. But like I said, this is Edgerton's movie, career best performance, grounded, lived in. He wears pain. He wears labor on his face. It's about posture, silence, in the spaces between reactions. It's all just great stuff. The kind of acting they don't necessarily teach in school. And, like I said, with a short runtime, nothing feels wasted. Not a moment. Not a single shot. Cons, if I'm being honest, and I always try to be, I'm not sure that this film is perfect. It's slight. Like I said, purposefully slow. So if you're a viewer who wants more narrative propulsion, more clarity, more something, like if you got to the end and were like, there just wasn't enough there, I get it. I have certainly watched other films. I've even watched some Malick films where I feel like that. But here's the thing. For this one, I don't know how much I care. It just kind of hit me in the sweet spot. I found myself reacting to it very emotively and connecting with it on a human level. This wasn't originally written by Netflix, but for one you can throw on Netflix and just watch, if you like that kind of thoughtful filmmaking, just like shot composition, the way things are framed, light against shadow, like, looking out over landscapes and water. I mean, it's just beautiful. It is beautiful. And for a guy who spent a lot of time last year reflecting on like what existence really means, my place in it, where I'm headed, what I'm after, how I define relationships and connection, I think that this one just nailed it. So to conclude, as I've just been saying, and by the way, there are some other cons that I'm sure we could come up with, that like there are better films which are longer, that are more like, if you're a true Malickian, is that a name? Did I just make that up? It sounds like molecule. Anyway, if you're there are things you can go after in this movie. There's like a choice about 10 minutes left in the movie. I won't spoil, but for some people, it would really work. For other people, it may leave a little puzzling. But I would just say I think where this one ended was almost picture perfect. So Train Dreams, in conclusion, hit me exactly where I'm living right now. The beauty of a life lived, the ache of love and loss, the strange comfort of connection in the midst of apparent pointlessness. I mean, it's a real Book of Ecclesiastes kind of flick. And it actually, if we're getting downright biblical about it, there's some real Book of Job stuff about this film too. I didn't think you guys were going to have me put this hat on today, but the sense that meaning doesn't always arrive wrapped in answers. That's Job's question throughout the entire books. But sometimes, honestly, the answer is presence, or in this case, connection, being part of something larger than yourself. Am I beating a dead horse? I might be. As some folks from my mother's Southern upbringing used to say, that'll preach. So, final score, 4.6 out of 5 stars. Loved it. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. Don't forget to like, subscribe. You know the deal. Till next time, I'm Nick Furman. This is Furman on Film. Stay firm, my friends.